Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ninth session of the webinar series on design and development of massive open online course. I am Sanjay Mishra, your host for this session, with my co-host, Professor Dr. Fong Shung Fook of University Malaysia Sabah. With us, we have Professor Paul Prinsloo today to talk about learning analytics and ethics in massive open online course or MOOCs. Professor Prinsloo is with the University of South Africa. Those of you who are not aware of UNISA, I must add that UNISA is the first distance teaching university in the world. Not Open University. Don't confuse with the Open University UK. It was the first distance teaching university in the world. Professor Prinsloo is PhD and DLit in theology, but his expertise is largely on open distance learning as such. And within that sphere of area of knowledge, he has built around a small space for himself in the world, in the learning analytics and ethics sphere. His works on learning analytics and ethics are most cited by everyone in the world. I think he is among the top experts, critics, researcher in this growing field of knowledge. And having him today is actually our privilege. And for me, it's an opportunity to listen to him on a topic which is very passionate to him. I have read several of his publications and I have also interacted with him a couple of times. So, Professor Prinsloo, welcome to this session and thank you very much for joining in. Professor Fong, few words from your end.
Oh yes, so Professor Paul Prinsloo, the last time I met him was in Edinburgh not so long ago, and he's a man that's so passionate to tell us what ought to be done or ought not to be done in our MOOC design and development. So we look forward to your sharing. Thank you, Prof. Paul.
Welcome to everyone, and it's good morning from South Africa. Thank you very much for the opportunity, and I really look forward to sharing my insights into learning analytics and ethics in MOOCs, and hopefully we can have a very, very good conversation. So let me just find the navigation tool. Okay, I'm there. I just want to acknowledge that this presentation will be published under Attribution Share Alike International License. The images that I've used in the presentation, I've sourced them from open sources, but I would love to acknowledge that they may have different licensing regimes that if you reuse this PowerPoint, that you may want to consider. So there we have it. This is the focus for today. So in the middle, you have MOOCs, and you've been now about 8 weeks or 8 sessions on how to design a MOOC. And if you look in the middle, there's people will enroll for whatever reasons. They will log in for the first time, or they may not log in. I'm very proud of myself. I've now completed my first MOOC. No, I think my third MOOC. Normally I would enroll because it looks interesting and I would log in, and then I just don't get a time. So you have enrollment data, you have loggings or no loggings, which is an interesting research focus. Then you have activities. You will be able to see how the learner progresses through, which videos they watch, which sources do they download, do they respond to other students in the course. So you will have data on that. You will get a sense of who they engage with, whether they favorite some people and engage more with others, and what are the implications, and how they network. So at the top of the screen you have, so this is what learning analytics is in broad sense. It's a measurement, the collection, the analysis, and reporting of data about learners. Now, at the bottom of the screen, the focus of today is not only on learning analytics and how you will design for that, but then what are the ethical implications of the measurement and the analysis, the collection and the reporting of data. And hopefully we can have a very good conversation about that. So this is just to recap. While higher education has always used data, if you think of assignments, if you think of registration detail, if you think of how higher education usually reports to a variety of stakeholders. In 2011, at the first Learning Analytics Conference, this is from the webpage of that conference, where they proposed this definition. And it's still, while there's been some changes since, this is still the standard definition, and maybe that's a good place to start, to say it's about measurement, it's about collection, analysis and reporting of data, and now for the very important part, about learners and their context. And even more important is for the purposes of understanding and optimizing learning and the environments in which it occurs. So this is crucial that we see there's many purposes for collecting student data, to see how the site works, whether it's designed properly, whether you need to report to whoever. But learning analytics allows us to understand how students progress through courses or not, and how to optimize that learning environment to make it easier for them. So, and this is just the fact that I've emphasized. There in the middle, you have from October 25 last year of a University of Newcastle that is commissioning software to record student attendance. And you can see there, and then really sad, learning analytics should not be used for student surveillance. And then George Siemens, one of the fathers, if not the father of learning analytics, said learning analytics should not be used for surveillance. And this is from his article in 2015, where we keep reminding ourselves, let's not forget, learning analytics are about learning. So having said that, let's now we've covered the learning analytics part, the definition. Let's just look at what is ethics. Now, there's basically two broad categories. On the one hand, you have the deontological approach to ethics, which is a basis for legal and regulatory frameworks. It's a basis for terms and conditions. You enter into a contract with a provider by consent or by contract, and it works well in stable environments. Then you have the teleological approach, where in designing the MOOC and designing the approach, you will look out for the potential for harm. What can happen if this data is shared? And the scope of consent and recourse in cases of unintended harm are negotiated and agreed upon. And I think that is what Dr. Sanjay alluded to say, if you are uncomfortable, don't switch on your video, but know that when you text or use the chat box, it is recorded and it may be shared. So this is a different two main approaches. One where if I enter into a contract with a MOOC provider like MOOC, like FutureLearn, then there's terms and conditions. And when after I have accepted the terms and conditions and I have concerns, the company may very easily say, but you opted in, you provided consent, even though many of us will not read the terms and conditions. On the right-hand side of your screen, the teleological approach, if I have a concern, the company will enter into an agreement with me and enter into a negotiation to say, although you opted in, let's talk about this. So you can see there's two very, very different approaches here. Increasingly, we work with a ethics of care, where we emphasize interconnectedness, relationships, and contexts. And it goes beyond what the rule book states as enough. So often in educational providers, when a student has a need, the company or the provider will just say, but you agreed that you will receive A, B, and C. And if that is not enough, that's not our problem. And ethics of care goes further than this to say it arises from compassion for another's needs and not necessarily their rights. And that's very important. Their rights is a deontological approach, while this goes to the teleological approach of what are their needs. Meeting the needs are more important than ensuring rights. And we will get back to the slide as we proceed. So this is just ethics. Now the basis for our discussion is data. And there's more and more talk about a data deluge, of a showering of more and more data. And it's referring not only to having access to more data, which is true, but also a greater variety of data, more nuance, a greater velocity, and increasingly real-time data. So when we talk about MOOCs and you can actually see how students engage and you have access to their demographic profiles, you may have access to their Facebook profiles if they use Facebook to log into the MOOC, you just have a lot of data. And then the increasingly important question is, what are the ethics when you have this variety of data and you can actually build a data profile about someone, often without them knowing. So this is a world of data. And in the middle, we have MOOC, there's Google, there's your location. We will be able to track where from your IP address, we will be able to track where you're logging on using Google, using Facebook, Twitter, there's Instagram, there's your Wi-Fi signals. We can locate you via your Wi-Fi signal. There's Amazon. There's a formal education provider like the University of Malaysia or the University of Cape Town. There's a MOOC provider. And now in this whole range, in this context, data are collected by individuals. As you are typing in the chat box, other people can see, they can take a screenshot of your response. And if you delete the comment, they still have the screenshot. There's data collected by education providers. There's data collected by corporates. MOOCs has a particular business model. They're in it to make profit, to provide a service. There's governments using data. With this current COVID pandemic, we've seen increasingly concern about how government trace people and contact tracing, and it raises a number of issues. There are increasingly data brokers that will work between Google and Amazon and your education providers, and they will sell our data for profit. And then there's fusion centers of centers dedicated to collect as much data as possible, and even to hack into accounts to get more data and then sell data packages according to the best price. So now that let me just go back. So in that world, how does it work when we share data? And this is from Kitchen, and I still find this a very useful way to look at how data is shared. You first have directed data. So it's a digital form of surveillance where the gaze of technology is focused on a person or place by a human operator. Very important. With artificial intelligence playing a bigger and bigger role, directed data, according to Rob Kitchen, is where the human will sit behind the screen and look at logging data. Automated data is an automatic function. Every morning I will get an automated report of which of my students logged in, how long they were on the site, with whom they interacted. It's automated, it just scrapes data. On the right-hand side, you have volunteer data. And again, back to what Dr. Sanjay said, you gift information by typing into the chat box, you are gifting. your information. You gift an opinion that is linked to your name, that's linked to your location, that's linked to your Facebook profile. So we gift information. So when we ask students to participate in discussion forums, this is where they would volunteer information. Now, very interesting, as we try to build a social presence in our MOOCs, we ask students to tell us a bit about yourself, share some detail. And from a provider's perspective, we often say to students, the more we know about you, the better we can support you. But then where does that data go? So volunteer data is an increasingly honeypot or honeypot for people that are interested in data. And then what is contractual, and this is my addition to Rob, is when I enter into FutureLearn, there's terms and conditions. When I enter into a course in Coursera or whatever platform provider, there's data required in the registration process. They require a picture, they require my address, they require. So there's a lot of data there. So the contractual data can also be surveys, assessment, research, and it can also be automated, the learning platform, access cards, clicker data, Wi-Fi tracking. Volunteer data, there's the discussion boards and inquiries, and you will see today we will focus a lot on the terms and conditions. What do I consent for? What do I opt, when do I opt in? And do I have an option to opt out? And what recourse to action do I have if I feel aggrieved? So think of when you design a MOOC, which is the purpose of this session, is when will you use directed data gathering? What automated data gathering processes will you use? What will you do with the volunteer data? And what are the contractual data that you will require? And most probably that refers to the cookies that students may accept or would accept in order to make this MOOC work. So that is the introduction. So I just thought these questions may be very useful. Ethics can be this abstract concept, but for me, these questions are actually very helpful. Why do you want my data? Tell me, if you collect data in the MOOC that you will design, why do you collect the data? Tell me. I need to be told, how will it be analyzed, by who, and how will it be used? Am I informed? More and more we see, especially with the automated data tracking, that I'm not informed that they will actually trace. Nowadays, when you log on, when you download an app, you can give permission to the app to track your location only when the app is used, or you can say anytime. The moment you say anytime, that app runs and track your location wherever you go. So am I informed? Did I give my consent? More important, can I withdraw my consent after I've registered for the MOOCs, and what are the implications? Do I know what I consent to? There's ample research to say that students, and we all, don't read the terms and conditions. So when I say accept the terms and conditions, click, what do I consent to? Who? Is it the human? Is it the AI system will have access to my data? Under what circumstances, for what purposes, and for how long? With whom will my data be shared? Under what circumstances, for what purposes, and for how long? So what other data sets will my data be combined with? And what are the implications? Will you combine my MOOC behavior data with my institutional record data, with my bank details, with my Amazon record? And why? And if I suspect unethical behavior, what recourse do I have? So this is just broad, very interesting questions for you to consider when you draw up a terms and condition, or when you decide to offer a MOOC through FutureLearn or Coursera or whatever provider you choose. How do they engage with these questions? Now, when I was invited for this, I was wondering, but what are the differences when we design learning analytics for a formal higher education institution, and how different is that when we do it for a MOOC? And I think the basis is, what are the terms and conditions of the contract? And in formal higher education, you will see the third bullet is there's external accreditation, there's quality assurance. It's not a single course, it's part of the diploma program. If a student withdraws or drops out, it has financial implications for both students and the institution. While in a MOOC, if a student withdraws or drops out, it's mostly opportunity cost for the student if they register for free. And then the question I have is, what are the costs of withdrawal for the MOOC provider? I mean, there's enough research to say the retention rate of MOOCs are very poor. And so when students drop out of the course, what are the implications? So in formal education, the purpose of learning analytics is continuous improvement, and almost to identify learners that are at risk and also learners with potential, to identify these and to respond to help them get through the course at their best potential. My sense is, in MOOCs, learning analytics identifies learner behavior to personalize offering, often in real time, and pedagogy and quality improvements. So while in formal education, there's a dedicated effort to use learning analytics to help the learner get through the course successfully and not drop out, it looks a bit different in a MOOC. And because learning analytics looks different in these two different contexts, I suspect the ethics look different. So you have terms and conditions on both sides. But in formal higher education, I suspect it's the foundation for further negotiations of ethics. While in a MOOC, terms and conditions has a final word with an emphasis on consent. You consented, you agreed to the rules, and if you're uncomfortable, you cannot do this MOOC. So these are you will have access to the slides. I'm not going to go in much more into this to say that because learning analytics look different, maybe they look at different data for different purposes, so there's different ethical implications in both of these. So my hypothesis that I want to share with you is that learning analytics and ethics in MOOCs are primarily determined by a deontological or rule-based approach to ethics founded on user consent. So that's my gut feeling, and I will show you why I believe this. So in 2015, Sharon Slade from the Open University of the UK and I did research on free MOOC providers, edX, Coursera, and FutureLearn. And we just say, okay, let's see what do they say in their terms and conditions about the types of data collected, the methods of data collected, the conditions for sharing the data collected, the users of data and user access to. And you can look into the article if you're interested. But what we look at just the length of terms and conditions, and FutureLearn at that stage in 2015 were 22 pages, Coursera 13 pages. So that often discourages students from reading the terms and conditions. I just don't have time to read 22 pages that is formulated in a very legal language. So I'm just going to opt in. So when you design a MOOC or when you decide to offer your MOOC through FutureLearn or Coursera, it's very important that we think of how will we make the terms and conditions accessible to our students. The terms and conditions also says what type of data will be collected. And there's this big thing about personally identifiable data and aggregated data, that they will just aggregate data means it will not be personalized, it will be the collection of a number of students' data that will not be identifiable back to the individual. Methods of data collection, mostly through cookies plus survey, cookies plus give us feedback on the platform, cookies plus. Conditions for sharing the data, At that stage in 2015, edX, Coursera, and FutureLearn said, we will share your data with your consent. Uses of data was mainly for the maintenance of the platform and the course, for improvement, and then for research. That's specifically to edX and FutureLearn. And all three of these providers said that you have access, you have responsibility, and you have control of some data, but you cannot opt out. There's some data that you have accepted in the terms and conditions. So that is 2015. Then in a follow-up article, we played with the title, The Unbearable Lightness of Consent, because there's enough research to say that we provide consent, often not understanding what we consent to. And I haven't included it in the slide, but if you're interested, you can look at the notion of the privacy paradox and the privacy calculus, where I would decide that it's a relation between what benefit do I get from sharing my data, what are the risks and my perception of the risks, and how much control do I have. So when you decide to share information on Facebook or to send a WhatsApp message to a partner or a friend, you decide what is the risk that this WhatsApp message may actually go somewhere else? What are the benefits of my sharing and how much control do I have? And consent is often based on the notion that we think we have control and we don't. So in this article, we would play to say, it's actually unbearably light to provide consent. And here we looked at 4 MOOC providers, edX, Coursera, FutureLearn, and iVersity. And it's important to consider why these 4, except that they're very big. edX and Coursera are from the context of the US, and that's very important. They have different privacy protection of data, while FutureLearn and iVersity are in the European context with the GDPR rules and regulations. So often when learners enter a course, they should also consider what is the national geopolitical location where the platform is located and the headquarters are located, because that gives a sense of, if I have a recourse to action, will I be protected? So in this article in 2018, we looked at how they define personal data and whether they acknowledge a category of special or sensitive data. And sensitive data normally refers to race, religion, your location, all those very, very personal data that can be used against you. We address the issues of scope of student consent, what do they consent to, and the use of student data to inform pedagogy and to actually adapt the learning experience. Just briefly, and these for the purposes of this morning or wherever you are, afternoon or evening, I just decided to focus on 2 things that we found. If we think of learning analytics as intervening into the learning of the student in order to improve their chances of success, we couldn't find anything in none of the 4. So the notion of intervention is not found. However, edX refers to personalization and recommendation as potential actions in using student information, but nowhere could we get a sense that care. They wanted the data, and to make the platform and to make the course better, but not in the sense of caring. We want you to help. We want to help you to get through this. So in the other platforms use synonyms, but it's always about enhancing courses and individualizing the user experience, but nothing to a commitment to help you get through the course and get you to the end. If you drop out, it's almost as if most MOOC providers say, sorry to see you go, but bye. Similarly, iVersity identifies potential opportunity to sweep up other information. This is of concern. So often when we log on to a new provider for whatever service, it says you can log on with Google account, you can log on with Facebook, or you can create a new account. And now, if you are like me, I just say, oh, another account, another password, really? So I just say, I will use my Google data or my Google password or login data or my Facebook profile. And what we actually do is to then give the provider access to your Facebook. So the diversity is very clear. If you log onto the platform using your Facebook account, for example, Facebook Connect, your Facebook profile and our offer will be linked, and you have thereby consented to the collection, processing, and use of data contained in your public profile, your Facebook profile. That's scary. So if you can imagine a student wanting to register for a MOOC, deciding, oh, I'm not going to create a new password, really? Let me just use my Facebook. And by opting in, they give iVersity their whole Facebook, all their contacts, everything they share. And that is of concern. In the last article that I will share with you, and that will actually illustrate how complex this is, we were talking about user consent in micro, meso, and macro perspectives. And let me rather show you what it looks like. So there's two students. They want to do a MOOC. They enter into an agreement with a course developed by the University of Cape Town using FutureLearn as platform. So by the moment they accept the terms and conditions, that's the micro level. So they give consent to. B is the agreement between the University of Cape Town and FutureLearn. And often these two people don't have access to that agreement. So what we were curious about is what information will FutureLearn share with the University of Cape Town about this person, gone back, and what information will the University of Cape Town share with FutureLearn. Now, what we increasingly see is that, for example, the University of Cape Town uses some MOOCs also offered by other providers as part of a qualification to support these students. So what is the agreement there? And our plot thickens. So you have there that FutureLearn may share information with a range of other people, that when these two students enter the initial agreement, they have no idea what is happening on C. So this is a complexity, this is the unbearable lightness of consent, that when I enter the platform, offered a course offered by the University of Cape Town on the platform of FutureLearn, which happens to be in the UK, which is at the moment covered by the GDPR. And then what do they share our details with? So this is just the diagram from the original article, that the student from a particular legal context, Malaysia, South Africa, India, where my data is protected. In South Africa, my data is protected. I enter into an agreement with an online course, University of Cape Town, the University of Cambridge, which may be in a different location and different privacy rules. I use a different massive open online course provider, Coursera, that is even in a different context with different privacy rules. And then there's model C or macro level C, where they may share my data with even a broader context where I don't have protection. I decided to not trust the internet connection, so I actually wanted to do this in real time, but let's play. I made screenshots. So I decided that I'm interested in education for all, disability, diversity, and inclusion. I noticed that it's provided by FutureLearn. It was developed by the University of Cape Town. And I look at, I like the design and discover ways to make education more exclusive. Yes, this is what I do. And then at the bottom, we see we use cookies to give you a better experience. Not we're going to trace you wherever you go. We want to give you a better experience. Okay. carry on browsing if you're happy with this. And often I don't have time. So yes, I'm happy. Or read our cookies policy. And the research says very few people read it. So for the purpose of today, I actually went down. So this is the first screen. FutureLearn, University of Cape Town, 2 different contexts, and then the fine print, literally. Down on the page, down you go, and on the right, and they actually call it the small print, and it should be the big print. There's terms and conditions, there's privacy policy, cookies, code of context, accessibility policy. Now remember, this is FutureLearn. Coursera has their own setup. If I look at the cookie policy, and this is where FutureLearn is actually great. They have a cookie policy, and they're very clear about what cookies will be loaded onto your computer when you register for that course offered by the University of Cape Town. So let's have a look. So there's 4 types of cookies, and you think a cookie is just a cookie. So there's strictly necessary cookies. So if you want to use FutureLearn, you cannot opt out of these. It allows the pages to load, the videos to play. Then there's analytical performance cookies to help us to improve the way our website works. It also helps us to personalize our content for you, greet you by your name, and remember your preferences. Now, if you've done 5 courses on FutureLearn, the moment you log on, it will say, hello, Paul, how are you? And it may even remember what pizza you ate in the previous MOOC because you shared that information with another student. So that's functionality cookies. And then targeted cookies is, we may also share this information with third parties for this purpose. And that's the scary part. We may. They don't say we will. They don't say we won't. They say we may. But so you see there's 4 levels of cookies, strictly necessary, and increasingly websites give you access to say, you can opt out of these, and targeting cookies, but the student has a choice. And for me, that's important. So let's look at the analytical performance cookies. Now remember, you accept the terms and conditions, and this cookie only expires after 2 years. It's on your computer. Even if you drop out of that course, that cookie stays on your computer for 2 years. Google Analytics for 90 days. So if I decide, no, this MOOC is not for me, I've provided consent, my data is there, the cookie is there. There's targeting cookies used by Facebook. Interesting, FutureLearn. So the cookie will expire only 3 months after I have accepted the terms and conditions. There's also LinkedIn. And then this is an interesting one. Our partner institutions like the University of Cape Town, in this case, may also use cookies over which we have no control. But when the student enters into the agreement with FutureLearn in a course that's offered by the University of Cape Town, we don't know what cookies the University of Cape Town will load and want to load. So there's a small print, the terms and conditions. You may be able to post your own content on the site. We won't claim ownership, but you do give us license to use, exploit, and sub-license it for any purpose associated with the provision of the website or the course. That's fairly massive. So if I share my intellectual property in a discussion post forum, I give my license for FutureLearn to use, exploit, and sub-license it. Look at your content. You grant as irrevocable, worldwide, perpetual, royalty-free, and non-exclusive license to use, distribute, reproduce, modify, adapt, publicly perform, and publicly display learner content. And I find that fairly dramatic. And it's irrevocably, once you've given the permission, it's out of your hands. Very shortly, and I'm wrapping up. So the privacy policy, we may also We may also collect data relating to your visits to the website that cannot identify you. That's the aggregated data. We may also collect your computer's IP address. Why? Why do you need that? They say in order to help us to tailor the service to your location. But then they can track my IP address wherever I am. You agree that your personal information may be collected, stored, used, and shared by us and our partners for the following purposes. So colleagues and friends, and we have to engage with this. And this is just the interesting one is they will use your information to provide, maintain, protect, and improve the quality of the website, to personalize the browsing experience, and to perform academic research, which is interesting. And I just want to briefly show that. It will be done with your consent. And I find this very good. If you object to the processing of your personal information, or you want to restrict the processing of your personal information, you can use the contact details below. So on the basis of consent at FutureLearn, you can withdraw your consent at any time. So now interesting, and withdrawing your consent will not affect the lawfulness of any processing we conducted prior to your withdrawal. So talk about ethics and learning analytics. This is just the research that they will allow. That's mostly by the academic institution with whom they are in collaboration with. But they're very strong FutureLearn to say there will be research ethics data guidelines. I'm wrapping up, colleagues. So if you design a MOOC, a lot of thinking about ethics go into the terms and conditions, which is mostly, and it's still my hypothesis, but determined by a deontological approach to ethics founded on user consent. So if we want to move from a deontological approach or a rule-based approach to an ethics of care in a MOOC, what will it look like? How will that change user consent and how we track and trace our students? Thank you very much. That's my contact detail, and in the slides there's just the main references for articles. So I'm just going to leave my screen there for a moment, and then I'm going to stop sharing, Dr. Sanjay. Thank you very much.
On behalf of all the participants, I thank you again for this excellent presentation. Thank you, Professor Fong, and thanks to all our participants from around the world, and particularly University of Malaysia. So thank you very much. Have a great day, and thank you to all.